Hi, guys. My name is Joe, and welcome to Tangent Tuesday. So, on the first Tuesday of every month, second Tuesday of every month, I pick a topic and I just go sort of free flow about my thoughts on it. And topic for today is based on a question I actually got asked last year, which is how the question I was asked was how many martial arts do I know, which you know, encouraged me to think about what does it mean to know a martial art. So before I get into that, just a really quick channel announcement. My Friday video is going to be a book review of the fourth and final book in the Bruce Lee's Fighting Method series. Now, once I'm finished with that series, I'd like to begin an additional book series. So probably Tuesday, I'm going to have a video and an accompanying community post with a poll on it asking for your input on which series I should do next. Um, and as a reminder, I'm also in the middle of two other series. One is Mark Hatmaker's No Holds Barred series. I think I've done 3 out of 8 books in it. And Jeff Thompson's Real series, Real Punches, Real Kicks. And I'm 3 out of 5 for that one. So be on the lookout for that coming up next week. So for tonight's topic, yeah, the I posted something on my Facebook page about martial arts, and one of my high school friends chimed in with, "How many martial arts do you actually know?" And that gave me a bit of pause because it's asking for a quantitative answer, but I think it needs a qualitative answer. Um, how do we know a martial art? Is it what rank you have? Like in martial arts with belt ranking systems, for instance, I think the casual public perceives a black belt as being an expert, whereas within those communities, a black belt is generally seen as being sort of the equivalent of a high school diploma, and everything past that is more like graduate level studies. So, and on top of that, there's also the fact that not all black belts are created equal. And, you'll get some programs that'll promise you a black belt within a year, and others that, there's some martial arts with a reputation that, it'll take, 7 years, 10 years to get your black belt in this system. So, when you think about how much of anything can I learn within a year compared to studying that same topic for a longer period of time, um, a black belt in a year, I probably wouldn't consider them an expert. But what about systems that don't have belt ranks? Because there's a bunch of those out there. Um, the Chinese martial arts originally didn't have belt ranks. For instance, you have historical European martial arts. You have things like boxing. How do you know if you know boxing? And to take that as an example, the only belts in boxing are the ones you win by beating other people. Um, there's, I think, a difference between technical knowledge and performative. I wouldn't call it knowledge. Um, Performative exercise. So, if you are a world champion, you are very good on the performative level. Um, Not to pick on him because I don't want to get hate from his fans, but boxing is known as the sweet science. Watch Deontay Wilder fight, and how much science do you think is actually in what he does? You know, dude hits really hard. He will also fall over himself throwing punches a lot of times that miss. So, compared to the ideal of boxing, which is, always be on balance, always be in a good defensive position, it's not just the sweet science, it's the sweet science of defense. And if your defense is off, you can't really be defensive when you're falling over your own feet, right? Well, again, performatively, he was at the top of the world, right? So, does being a world champion equate to knowing something? I think that might vary. Um, I can't. I don't personally know in depth a whole lot of what like forms champions do, for instance. But when they are doing their forms, do you think they are thinking of the applications of their forms? I'm not sure. If they don't, would you consider them really knowing the form, even though they can perform it at a high level? I don't know. I don't think I would necessarily. Um, Taking a look at some other examples, we have, in my case, understanding things on an academic level. Like I've taken all of like 2 hours of Aikido in like drop-in classes during my Navy days. I got a lot of books on it, and I I don't think I would say that I know Aikido. I don't think I'd ever say that without actually investing some time practicing the techniques, learning it from a qualified instructor. But also, it's rare that I see someone performing an Aikido technique that I cannot identify what the name is. I know a lot of the history. I know, do I know Aikido? That's not. Does someone need to know the history of a martial art in order to say that they know it? Like what does it mean to know a martial art? You know, on as another example, we can think of other activities. If you play violin and you've gotten as far as like learning all of your scales, so just like the warm-up stuff, na 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 na, right? Do you know the violin? Yeah, but it's definitely not the same as like the first chair of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra or something like that. That person is clearly, as far as their demonstrable skill goes, at a higher level. So when we talk about knowing a martial art, does it come down to skill? And how do we demonstrate that skill? I brought up performance earlier, but performance is largely judged by competition. If you do really good in your demos at your school, is it equivalent? If you're really good at sparring in your own school, is that the equivalent of fighting competitively? I think people who have done both would say that there's definitely a difference. But are you not displaying some sort of technical and performative knowledge? So, what does it mean to know a martial art? And I'm giving you guys a long-winded answer. That's sort of the same answer I gave my high school friend, who was, like, I got a black belt in karate. Does that mean that I know it? Up to a certain level, perhaps. I continued to study it after I was no longer attending those specific classes. But again, Jeet Kune Do doesn't, in most cases, typically have ranks. It might have certifications, but it doesn't have ranks. How much Jeet Kune Do I know? Well, spent 3 or 4 years learning under an instructor, but also, again, I got a giant bookshelf full of them, because I like really want to understand it in depth. How much Jeet Kune Do I know? Can I say that I know it? I think I'd feel reasonably comfortable to at least, somebody ask me, do you know Jeet Kune Do? Yeah. Mentally, I really want to qualify that by saying, like, I have a solid understanding of the basics. Do you have to be an expert to say that you know it? As I sort of alluded to by the violin example, I don't think that's necessarily the case. You can know something to a certain level. I have practiced this to a point where, I can say that I am, to a certain level, good at doing it. I don't need to be an expert. I don't need to be a black belt. You know, does a green belt in karate know karate? They know a certain level of karate, right? So that's all my little ranting for tonight. I'd like to throw the question back at you guys. What do you think it means to know a martial art? You know, for me, I think I've sort of presented it as being somewhat subjective and sort of on a sliding scale. Um, but what does it mean to you? Somebody asked you, you know, do you know the martial art that you're studying? You know, I mean, I can say me personally, I make a concerted effort, but in sort of a reverse of the Dunning Kruger effect, like the more I learn, the more I am desperately aware about how much more there is to learn in like any of the martial arts I've ever pursued, you know, and I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences. So yeah, at what point does someone know a martial art? So let me hear back from you, and thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you later.